We are supposed to live this life with others. A minute ago when we were talking about our friends, I looked out into this crowd and was just so thankful for a body of believers to walk through this life with. But it's a fact that we were meant to be in relationship. Newton's law of gravity even says it, that two bodies attract each other with a force that is directly proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. Okay, I'm not a science major. I don't claim to know exactly all that means, but I understand that two bodies cannot exist in close proximity without affecting each other. It's not possible. I've heard Ann Smith say it like this, that if you're walking down the street and you pass someone walking down the street, that person changes you. Each person that you come into contact with in your life changes you, changes me. We were meant to be in relationship. What's the most brutal punishment that our legal system offers besides the death penalty? Solitary confinement. It's a fact. We were meant to be in relationship. There's even health studies out that have proven that that friends are the most effective medicine for your ailments. It's proven that friends can help us ward off depression, that it boosts our immune system to have friends, that it lowers our cholesterol, and even keeps our stress hormones in check. Francis Bacon said it like this. He said, friendship reduces joy, I'm going to start over. Friendship redoubleth joy and cuts grief in half. A lot of the things that we heard this morning was that very thing. When we go through a hard time, the first person I go to is my friends. When I'm rejoicing about something, the first person I want to go tell are my friends. First my wife, which is my friend, and then other friends. We were meant to be in relationship. I don't know if you know it or not, but in the past 3 weeks we've been going over this series with relationships. We've been going through a book called Relationships by Les and Leslie Parrott. And they talk about two kinds of friendships that we encounter. We encounter friends of the road and friends of the heart. And each one requires us to learn how to die to ourselves for our friends. We're going to connect to those two principles that I talked about, that death brings life and that we need friends. Friends of the road. The story that kind of came to mind when I started reading about the friends of the road was the story of the Good Samaritan. We all know it. I think most of us know it. Story about this man who gets robbed on this road. And these travelers come by and they start passing him by on other sides of the road because they don't want anything to do with him. And then finally this Samaritan comes by on his journey just minding his own business and sees this man in need of a friend. He sees this man who needs comfort, who needs help. He sees this man who's in desperate need of a friend. And so he engages the man. He engages the need. He dies to himself by putting off his agenda. Maybe he had to be at the next town over in an hour, but he wasn't going to make that anymore. He puts aside his financial burden that he's going to acquire by this man because he puts him up in a hotel and tells the innkeeper to take care of him. He dies to himself in these things. He stops thinking about himself for a minute and cares for this man in his moment of need. These two were considered to be friends of the road because, as far as we know, after that experience, after his needs were met, those two never talked again. And that's okay. We have friends like that come in and out of our life, don't we? Do you still talk to all your high school friends? I'm only 4 years removed from high school, and I don't talk to all my high school friends. And that's okay. That happens. They taught us things at that time. They were influential in our lives at that time, and then that time passed on. But the other friends that we're talking about here are friends of the heart. Friends that go with us beyond the road's end. Friends that go with us in mind and heart and in spirit. Friends that'll drop anything at 4 a.m. when you've heard disturbing news about one of your family members. Friends that'll travel halfway across the country just to see you for a couple days. Friends of the heart. I was thinking about friends of the heart, and the story of David and Jonathan came to mind in 1 Samuel. And it says that they made a covenant with each other because they loved each other. Now, I'm going to give you the MAV version of this story. This is the much abridged version. But David, this is the same David that killed Goliath. This is the same David who eventually will be king. And this is the same David who became King Saul's commander of his armies. Jonathan in this story is King Saul's son, heir to the throne, and David's best friend. King Saul became jealous of David because he was walking through the town one day and heard people talking about how Saul had killed thousands, but David had killed tens of thousands for the kingdom. And so David started to fear for his throne. He knew that David would one day be king, but Saul wanted to kill David, and he tried repeatedly to kill David. Okay, this is what I want you to hear about this story. Jonathan and David were friends. They were committed to each other. They were open with each other. They would give anything for each other. And Jonathan did. He died for David in that he remained loyal to keeping him safe. Do you remember what happened? David and Jonathan had met, and they decided that they would come up with this code. David had already fled town. He'd left town. David had already left town, and they decided that David was going to hide behind this rock outside of the kingdom. And Jonathan was going to go in to the feast of that week and was going to talk to his dad. And of course, there would be a place at the feast for David, but the placemat would be set, but David wouldn't show up. And they decided that when King Saul asked where David was, that Jonathan would tell him. And if King Saul got mad, then Jonathan would leave, go out and shoot an arrow to the rock, and David would know that it's not safe, that King Saul really did want to kill him. So what happened? They went to the feast, King Saul and Jonathan and all the court, not David. And Jonathan told King Saul where David was. And King Saul became furious, just furious. He even picked up a spear and threw it at his own son, Jonathan. And so Jonathan knew that it was true, that the king really did want to kill David, which was Jonathan's best friend. I'm hoping this is making sense.